Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of 10 for the Chairman. This is where I answer 10 questions that have been asked by our subscribers. For those of you who don't know, subscribers are the subset of our community that kick in a little extra money every month to enable us to do a lot of extra community content. So this show, Wingman's Hangar, a lot of our behind the scenes stuff, Jump Point, is all sort of financed by the money that comes in from subscribers, and then of course it trickles down. This right away, but even the Jump Point stuff trickles down to the general community at all. So we all owe a big thanks to our subscribers. And I asked them 10 questions. So just while we're starting here at the beginning, I have a nice book, Ace of Aces, about René Fonck. I'm probably butchering his name in French. But Francois Girard sent it as one of our backers based in France. And René was the top allied ace next to Richthofen. And obviously this is going back to one of my 10 for the Chairman when I was talking about the film that I'd worked on that involved the Red Baron, Baron von Richthofen. So thank you very much for this book. It's actually kind of interesting because all these pilots and all these characters are people that I researched when I was writing the American Night script, which was the World War I based script. And it's a fascinating time. And in fact, some ways, this kind of stuff informs Star Citizen, Squadron 42, and in the past, Wing Commander, because there's a sense of sort of camaraderie between the pilots and the squadrons and chivalry. And anyway, it's very cool. So thank you, Francois, for the book. Much appreciated. Okay, so let's get to the 10 questions here. The first question is from Lamvaris. David Haddock mentioned some stuff about writing in-universe fiction involving player actions, such as interviewing a player who discovers a new jump point and then putting out a Spectrum post about it. Do you know how some large-scale player actions that affect the universe are going to be handled from a lore and gameplay standpoint, like Operation Pitchfork? Well, I'm not so sure. I mean, Operation Pitchfork is a pretty big operation, which may be beyond the ability of the game to support in the manner that everyone envisions. But our goal is to really have the player actions become part of the universe's lore and fiction. So we'd actually talked about once the game's live, that we have, part of the live team is almost like a, think of it as a news team, but it's not a news team for today's world, it's a news team for our virtual world. So they're paying attention to what the players are doing, and when there's sort of meaningful, battles or exploration or intrigue or events happening, they actually create in-fiction reporting content for it, which could go as far as interviewing, say, some of the players involved, and then having it done up as a news. So if you go into a bar, there's a program playing on the monitors, and it's sort of the 60 minutes of our universe, and it's talking about this event that happened in this side of the galaxy, which was a player-driven event. And if the player-driven events are sort of big enough or meaningful enough, our goal would be to sort of run with them and also weave them into what we're doing with the universe. So the way to think of it is the same way, like if you ever played D&D a long time ago, or any sort of tabletop role-playing game, where the game master sort of has his idea of the story he's taking you on, but he's always constantly like taking what the players are doing and folding that into what he's weaving you as a story. I mean, that's the sign of a good game master, and we're going to try and do that with Star Citizen. Okay, so next question comes from Mabarus, who asks, how will commanding work in battles? Will we have some kind of strategic view of the area and can designate targets, objectives, and waypoints for individual players or designated wings? Kind of an RTS view for commanders. So, well, there'll be, so commanding in battles, in the space battles, is going to be pretty interesting. I mean, obviously, the capital ships are going to be a large part of that, and there's multiple stations on the capital ships. In a future date, we're going to sort of have a really in-depth behind the scenes, sort of like a Death of a Spaceman piece about what we're going to do on the big capital ships, to sort of show you kind of the level of I guess, sophistication that we're trying on that, and just how all these different stations inside the ship can work together. And because just having a big ship is not going to mean that you're going to win a battle. You're actually going to have a team of players that are operating the big ship well in concert to be effective. And I think that's true in real life, and it's going to be pretty cool. So one of the things, just if we're talking about a commanding basis, usually there'll be sort of a kind of a battle command or whatever, so I don't know, who will be designated commander, but it will be sort of like a big holosphere, and you're going to see a very small version kind of that you would in the dogfighting, even in the radars, which are these sort of holospheres, but the big ones will be much bigger areas, and essentially, you're looking at the sphere and you're clicking, you can see these sort of digital holographic versions of the various ships in their positions, and you click on them and give them a command or drag an arrow over and say attack over here. So you will sort of essentially have an RTS view that you're communicating with, and then that from there will be sending messages to the person in his fighter or in his bomber or in his corvette or whatever, and say, hey, you're required to attack this ship. So it should be pretty cool. We're looking forward to it. That's sort of the Dogfight V3 level that I sort of hinted at in another episode intended for the chairman. The next question comes from Cafade. Has there been any more development on the racing aspect of Star Citizen? Will we have betting and spectator systems? We haven't done a huge amount of development on the racing part of Star Citizen. We've been pretty heads down on just sort of the spaceflight dogfighting side. I will say that we do plan to make it a feature. There will be sort of in-game betting, and there will be spectator ability, and we're going to have the whole, have a circuit that people can race on, just like we're going to have sort of a, in-fiction esports version of the dogfight simulator, which is what we're going to essentially be rolling out with the dogfight modular, which is the, sort of the sim mode where it allows you to sort of virtually take your ship out and fight other people to, hone your skills as a pilot without actually risking your ship. So those two things are things that we're planning to make kind of almost into sort of, whatever you want to call it, esports or something, but sort of in-fiction esports. I think it'll be quite cool. Next question comes from Oroshi, who asks, will we get hangars for our orgs, and will members be able to leave their ships there, maybe while flying in an org-owned ship? So yes, we do have plans to have organization hangars, which are much bigger, shared. They'll be communal. We're going to allow organizations to also be able to sort of buy ships, and like I think I've said before, organizations will be able to sort of tithe, tax, demand fees from their members, and they should be able to sort of loan them out to various members to use. And I would guess you would probably let players, they could probably leave their ship there, especially if they're taking off a organization-owned ship. So yes, the answer will be yes there. Next question comes from Pid, who asks, how much time will it take for information to travel from one end of the playable space to the other, since communications do not travel at FTL speeds? It's not 100% defined yet, because that's sort of a balance playable thing. The way that the communication is going to work is it sort of travels at our in-fiction communication speed, which means that when you're in system and someone beams a message, it gets beamed at the speed of light, and essentially it gets beamed, to a relay station or a message station. So this is in sort of the structured, universe where UEE runs, and there's a lot of like infrastructure. And say one of these stations is right by a jump point, and so it gets all the information, and then it will launch out a message drone or a messenger ship. Will go through the jump point to the other side where there's probably another relay station. That data is then transferred up to the data station. Then it gets beamed across to another relay station, and so on and so forth if it has to go multiple systems. So essentially, the speed of communication is sort of based around the speed of light and how long that message would take to travel in system, and then it's instantaneous between system jumps, except for the regularity or the schedule of the message drones or the messenger ships that go through the jump points. So in a very populated core system, that's happening all the time, but in a backwater system, it won't be very frequent at all. And in fact, in some systems, there won't be any of that infrastructure, and that's where info runners and other people come into account, because they'll be taking missions to take information that's critical and as fast as they can, and especially if there's other people that want to stop that information getting there. So in terms of game time, it's kind of hard to quantify, but I think we would probably sort of limit it within the limits that I sort of gave there, within how long it would take you actually to transfer a jump point and what the regularity is. But obviously we recognize that people will be able to chat and talk to each other instantly, because if we don't provide it in the game, they're going to be doing it outside the game anyway. So we're going to provide it, but in terms of like any goods or missions being accepted or missions being offered, or all the sort of in-game stuff that we do control, that will all operate at the speed of communication in our universe. Okay, next question comes from Natas, who asks, there has been some talk about gravity generators being part of the ship mechanic. I was wondering if you could go into a little more depth as to how this will work if that system is taken offline. For example, will we be able to move about the ship without gravity? And if so, how will this be done? Or will the crew of your ship that's not being belted be stuck floating in space? Okay, so, well, that's a good question. This is actually something we've been working on. The first-person shooter team has actually got zero-G movement and everything to a nice stage. We're going to add even more stuff, but you will essentially, if the gravity system gets turned off in your ship, and by the way, this is something you could use to mess up with borders. So borders come in and you turn gravity off, immediately you're in zero-G. So unless you've got magnetic boots, which we're also going to let you have, you'll float around. And when you're in zero-G, we're also going to let you sort of push off walls and elements, and certain suits will have thruster sets that will let you maneuver in zero-G. So it's going to be a whole level of extra gameplay that's going to be super cool, that's pretty different than a lot of first-person shooter gameplay that you're aware of. So, if you've seen Gravity and the pushing off and all that, we're going to have all that, plus the thrusters maneuvering, which I guess you also saw a little bit in Gravity when they're outside. You can use the Gravity, no Gravity as sort of a defense mechanism. And, if you're storming a ship, it may be a good idea to have magnetic boots that you can turn off and on. So when you want to be walking around, you're using magnetic boots, you want to get into zero-G, you just turn off your electromagnet, and then you're floating if you push yourself off. Okay, there you go. So next question comes from Terra Titan Opticon, who asks, if you have to space your cargo hold in the persistent universe to avoid being boarded, will you be able to leave some kind of booby trap, like an explosive device or tracker hidden in the cargo? Or maybe even an ink bomb like they use at the bank. That would be pretty funny. Something to make pirates think twice. That's a good question. I think there would be no reason why you wouldn't be able to have something that you could have in your cargo that could be an explosive device. So part of your cargo could be a bomb that you could remotely detonate, or you could even have a tracker hidden in the cargo. I think I mentioned on a previous tab with the chairman that we were working on the cargo system, and one of the concepts was, a higher end cargo container could have sort of low jack ID identification on it, whereas most of the basic ones don't. So if you have one of those, it's much harder for you to, if you gain one of those illicitly, it's much harder for you to sell one of those. So I think, we're definitely thinking of things to do that, and then of course there would be the counters for the pirates, because it's always fun to sort of have this back and forth as far as that goes. Okay, next question comes from Revilo1337, who asks, what will happen to everything we've achieved, earned, bought, etc. at the end of the persistent universe alpha and beta? That's a pretty good question. We haven't really thought that through properly yet. I mean, I would say that probably it won't carry through to the full game. There may be some case where we sort of feel like we're in beta and that's good enough and that will carry through, but probably sort of the early alpha stuff where you're just there's, I think our first sort of persistent universe test will be sort of in one closed system, or one or two closed systems. And I think we'll probably do one system first, and then we'll open up a couple extra systems for jump points and sort of build it up that way. And the early stages, I think that it would not make sense for you to carry across all the stuff that you've earned in a sort of kind of unbalanced closed system into the main one. But at some point in beta, it will be close enough to what it is that it will carry across. But haven't fully decided on that yet. Okay, next question comes from Jabu, who asks, you mentioned in the beginning that there will be also mission discs for Squadron 42, at least one. Will a character be able to go back to do these mission discs of Squadron 42 after finishing the original campaign and moving on to the PU? Yes, absolutely. I mean, in fact, the additional Squadron 42 story packs or whatever will be written and designed to be such that they're expected to be after you've finished Squadron 42 and you've mustered out into the great galaxy as a whole. So you definitely will be able to go back to them after finishing the original campaign and being in the persistent universe. Last question comes from Starshock. With the voice chat, will we be able to just do a short-range broadcast to everyone nearby? If so, would I be able to charge into battle blasting out Ride of the Valkyries? That's kind of cool. Yeah, definitely Apocalypse Now moment there. So, yeah, I mean, I think the voice chat, the way it's going to work is that you can hail people, and then people can decide whether they want to listen to you. I don't know whether it would be they listen to you by default and then they can mute you, or they have to accept listening to you in the first place, but you definitely will be able to broadcast in a close range a message or potentially play music, and if people are have the comm channels open, they will hear it. We just need to be sensitive to how to set that up in such a way that people can't use it to abuse other people, because you don't want people, being obnoxious, which people are quite known to do in online games. But we will definitely, would like to get IP, voice over IP, running in the game, and then we'll just figure out the right system for you being able to broadcast people, or people being able to accept whether they want to listen to you or not. So there you go. They're my 10 questions for this week. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you found them informative. And again, thank you to all the subscribers for contributing extra money to enable us to do all this kind of additional community content. Thank you to the backers out there for essentially allowing us to make this incredibly ambitious game that we've all dreamed of, and I think you guys have dreamed of. So thank you, and I'll catch you next week. Goodbye.